In a previous video, we worked with the search class, which collects the data submitted through the form. In this video, we are going to have a look at the sticky class. Sticky class will be used with the form to keep the selected values after the form has reloaded. Okay, so within the test unit search directory, we are going to start with a new test, and we are going to call it StickyText. And within this class, we are going to extend test case, same way as before. And we are going to start with the private property sticky, which is going to be of a sticky class instance. And then we're going to have another private property called empty sticky. And it will also be an instance of sticky class. We obviously don't have this sticky class yet, so let's quickly go back to our app directory, then search, and let's create it. So a new class called sticky, and the namespace is app search, which is all fine. And let's leave it like this for now. So at least we can actually import it to our test. Then we are going to start with the setup method. So protected function setup. First of all, we are going to call parent setup to make sure that obviously if there is anything else in the parent class that needs to be executed first, we do that first, and then we add our own code. And we start by adding a few items to the get request. So get, and the first one will be keyword, and we'll set it to book. Then I'm going to duplicate it. Let me just create a few new lines. Keyword, then we're going to have category. Category we're going to set to integer 2. The next one is going to be cover type, which we are going to set to 4. Then we'll have language, also represented by the integer. Let's have it as 1. Actually, the other way around. Cover type 1. And language 4, because obviously cover type we only have 2, so it's going to be 1 and 2, and then language there might be obviously more than just 2 of them. Okay, so language, after language, duplicate the line again, and we're going to set it to town. And town, we are going to have 3 items in the array, say 3, then 6 and 12. And then we are going to create a search instance, new search, because search is going to be the class that our sticky class will need in order to run. And the search will take request, illuminate HTTP request with a capture method, which returns itself, and then we pass what we actually want to get from the request. It's going to be keyword, all these items that we actually added here. So keyword, then we have category, then we have cover type, then we have language. Because it's a test, it doesn't have to be exactly what we have, because I think for the town we have location, but it doesn't really matter. It's just basically to test that whatever the functionality we're going to have within our sticky class, that this functionality actually works as expected without actually being specific about what fields we're going to use in the live project. So I'm going to import these classes. So search is imported. Now the request also needs to be imported. So if we now scroll up, you'll see these classes have now been added here, the use statement. And so we have our search, and now we are going to do this sticky equals new sticky, and this one will take this argument search. So we pass this search through as an argument, and then we are going to have another get. Now we're going to overwrite all these items that we added to get, and we just set it to an empty array. So all these items are now erased, although this sticky instance here will still contain the sticky instance of the sticky class with the search that actually contains all these items from the get super global. Okay, so now we reset it all, and we're going to set empty search equals new search, and this time we are going to add, let's add all the same items pretty much. So if we just put it like this, and this time we are going to set it to this empty sticky equals new sticky as well, but this time we pass this empty search to it. So basically there won't be any items within the request, even though we actually pass in the search with all these items, indicating that we want to fetch all these items, but obviously the get now doesn't contain any items, so our collection within the search is going to be empty. Okay, so we have two instances, first one which will have some items, the other one that doesn't have any items. Now our sticky class needs this constructor now, so let's open a sticky class, and we are going to start with the property, private property search, which is going to be an instance of this search class, and then constructor, and we want to instantiate it. So there we go, we've got constructor, it takes search, instance of a search class, and then associates it with the property. Okay, let's go back to our sticky test, and we are going to start with our first test. The first test will check that the method called text, which we don't have yet, returns correct value. So public function text returns correct value. And let's mark it as test. And here, what do we want to have? Well, let's go straight away for the assertion. So this assert equals, and I want to see book when I call this sticky text, and I pass the index of the field that should contain this value, which is going to be keyword. And then if it does not contain book, then text does not return value book. Let's save it. If we go to our terminal and run PHP unit, and there we go, we have 55 tests, 114 assertions already, and one error. Sticky test text returns correct value, and we have error call to undefined method text. And it's fair enough because obviously we don't have this method yet. So let's go back to our sticky class and let's create this method. So we're going to start public function text, and it will take name of the field that we actually want to fetch the value from, and then default value if this field isn't present or the value is empty. And let's add doc block. Name is going to be of the string type. Let me just again scroll up here as well. Null or mixed for default, because it may be integer, it may be string, and so on. And then sticky text field for the summary. And we are going to start with if is not this search has name. In other words, if search does not contain item with this name, then return the default value. Otherwise, return this search get item by this name. Let's update here the return statement. So it may return null or it may return mixed. Actually, we could probably remove this null because mixed can also contain null anyway. Okay, so that's our sticky text. Let's now go back to the terminal and let's run our test again. And there we go, everything passes, so it's all fine. If we go back to the sticky text, the next assertion that we're going to be doing is this assert equals, and we're going to set it as default value when we call this, and this time we are going to use this second instance, which was empty sticky. We know there was no item. There was not a single item in this get request because we reset it to an empty array. So text, keyword, which we know won't return anything, and then the default value we're going to specify default value. And this is what we're expecting to be returned because obviously this item will not be present in a collection of the search class instance. And if it fails, then we're going to say a text does not return default value. And let's test it again. So back to the terminal, run the same test, but this time rather than actually running all of the tests, let's just point to this specific sticky test file. So tests, then unit, search, and then we have sticky test. And there we go. We have one test with 2 assertions. All of them are passing. Okay, the last assertion that we're going to do here, obviously they all return what we want, but let's see if we're going to get null if we actually try and obtain just the value from an empty sticky instance. Obviously that should return null, so let's check if this assert null, and we go for this empty sticky, and we look for text again, keyword, and that should return null. So we're gonna, because obviously default value is going to be returned in this case, and default value, if you go back to sticky, obviously is set to null. So that's what we're expecting to receive here. And the message will be text did not return null. Let's save it, run the test, and there we go. 1 test, 3 assertions, all of which are passing. So our text sticky method is now done. Let's go for the next one. The next one will be the select sticky method. So public function select correctly returns selected attribute. And again, let's mark it as text, but I'm going to just scroll up a little bit before that. So test, and we're going to start with this assert equals, and what I expect to see is selected equals, and between a double quotes selected. This is basically selected attribute with the space before this selected. And we're looking for this sticky select method. We don't have it yet, and we're looking for category, and we pass the ID of 2, the integer 2 to it, and then select does not return selected value 2. Let's just double check the category we actually set to 2 here. Yes, it is 2, so that's what we're expecting to receive. So we should get selected attribute when we are calling this select method on a sticky instance, calling this category index with the value 2. If we run it now, obviously we're going to get an error because we don't have this select method yet. So let's quickly create it. Back to our sticky class. We're going to start with public function select, and this one will take 3 arguments: name, then value, and then default. By default is going to be null. And we start with if, again, this search does not have, so just has a name, so it doesn't have item by this name, then we are going to select the default item. And rather than just typing all this straight in here, we're going to delegate this to another method. So return this select default, and we pass value and then default. And let's add this method straight away as well. So let's add method. There we go. And by default, we're going to set this default as well to null here. So select default, what we're going to do here, we're going to check if is null default or value does not equal default, then we return null. Nothing's going to be returned. I mean, it's going to return null basically. Otherwise, we return this selected method, which will basically return this selected equals selected attribute. So let's create this selected method. We're going to go through all this in just a moment again. So return selected equals, and between a double quote, selected. So that's what we want to return when we actually want to select the given item. So if our search does not have item by a given name, then we delegate it to the select default, and select default checks if default is null or the value that we pass through does not equal the value, the default value, then we return null. Otherwise, we know that this is the item that should be selected. That's why we're returning this selected for it. And let's add some doc blocks. We haven't finished select yet, so let's just add to select default. The value might be anything, so mixed. Default will be null. It's also going to be mixed, so let's do mixed here. And it may return null or string. That's correct. And now sticky default select. For the selected method, we are going to add return string, that's fine, and then selected attribute. And I think that does it. That does what we actually needed to do. Okay, so now back to select method. Now we're going to check if this search get, and then we get this item, because obviously at this point we know that obviously there is item with this index within the search class, and does not equal value, then we return null, because that's not the item that should be selected, in other words. And otherwise we return this selected. So again, we first checking if item does not exist within the collection, then we select the default value. Otherwise, if item with this name does not equal the value that we're looking for, we also return null. Otherwise means that obviously the item that we're looking for is within the collection and the value is what we're actually expecting to be, at which point we obviously return the selected attribute. So let's add the doc blocks to this method as well. We are going to say name is going to be a string type, then value is going to be mixed. Default value is going to be either null or let's just put mixed again, and returns null or string. That's all fine. And we're going to call it StickySelect. Okay, now if we go back to our test, and now if we actually run it, there we go. We have two tests for assertions, all of which are passing. So let's continue with our test. There are two more assertions that I want to add here. So we're going to go for this assert equals, and we go for, again, selected, and we expect it when we run this empty sticky method select with the name category. And we know obviously category is not going to be listed within this empty sticky instance because this collection is completely empty, but we are going to pass the integer 5 as the value and the default 5 as well. So that's the default item that I want to have selected, both of which are the same, obviously value, represent the same value, at which point we should get this sticky selected. And then message, if it won't get it, then we're going to say select does not return selected with default value. And let's run this test again. And there we go, 2 tests, 5 assertions, all of which are passing. Now let me just go back to this one. So we know that this empty sticky doesn't have any items. The collection is empty, at which point if we go back to sticky, this method will have, this value will be represented by integer 5, and default also has 5 associated with it. So it doesn't have the item, so we're going to be delegated to select default. Now select default gets 5 and 5 again, so it checks if it's null default, and default won't be null because it's going to be 5, or value does not equal default, that's also evaluating to false. So this null is not going to be returned, at which point we're going to hit this selected, and that's what we're going to return with this call. I hope that makes sense. Okay, next assertion that I'm going to use here is going to be this assert null when we are calling this empty sticky select and just category with 20, for instance. We know that obviously, first of all, there is no index category on this empty string, and even if there was, it's not going to be 20 anyway. So then if it fails, then we're going to say select does not return null. Save it, run the test, and there we go. 6 assertions already, 2 tests, all of which are passing. Okay, so that's the select method. The next method we are going to be adding to our sticky class is going to be the one that takes care of the radio buttons. So we're going to start with a test again. Public function radio button correctly with 2 obviously, correctly returns checked attribute, because radio buttons use checked attribute when it's actually selected. So let's mark it as test, and we are going to start again with the assertion. So this assert equals, this time rather than select, it's going to be checked equals checked. When we are calling the method on the sticky instance called radio, and we're going to look for the index cover type, and the default value, the value that we're looking for is represented by integer 1. Okay, if it fails, then we're going to say radio button does not return checked with value 1. And obviously if we run it, we're going to get the message that radio does not exist. So let's go back to the sticky class, and within the sticky class we're going to start with a public function radio, and it takes the name, the value, and then the default value. By default is going to be null. And we're going to start again with if this search doesn't have, so has name, then we return this, and we're delegating this the same way as we did with the select to radio default method. We pass value and then default as argument. Let's quickly add this method straight away. And radio default, I will check if is null default, and let's associate null by default with this argument, or value does not equal default, then we return null. Otherwise we're going to return this checked method. Okay, so now for the checked, all we need to do here is simply private function checked, and this one will return space checked equals, and between double quotes checked. Let's add dog blocks here, return string and checked attribute. Then radio default, value is going to be mixed, default was also going to be mixed. And what did we say for the select default select? Sticky default select, so we're going to say sticky default checked for this one. Okay, so let's continue with the radio method. So radio method, if we know that there is an item, because obviously if it wasn't, then we would return straight away this radio default. So we know there is an item with this name, so we checked if this search get and then the item with this name does not equal the value, then we know that that's not the item that we're actually interested in. So again, we're going to return null. Otherwise, we return this checked. And let's add dog blocks to this method as well. Name is going to be string. Value is going to be mixed. Default is going to be mixed as well. And then sticky radio button. Okay, let's go back to our test. If we run it now, and there we go, 3 tests, 7 assertions, so it's all good. So let's now add another assertion. This assert equals again, and we also expect checked equals checked. When we call this empty sticky this time, radio with cover type, and again cover type is not gonna exist on this collection within the empty sticky, but we are going to pass 2 other arguments with exactly same value, so that should match. and it should return this checked. And again, message is going to be radio button does not return checked with a default value. If we save it, run the test again, and there we go, everything works. So back to our editor, the last assertion for this test, this assert null. This time we run empty sticky with radio, looking for cover type with value 20, and we know that obviously there was no item. With 20 there was no item at all within this empty sticky, so that should return null. And then radio button does not return null. So save it, run the test again. Now 3 tests, 9 assertions, all of which are passing, which means our radio method also works as we expect it to. And let's continue with the sticky class in the following video.